The Carpenter and the Cradle, A History Weaver Adventure, Book 1, by Connie Worden. Read by the author. Chapter 16. "Hey, Georgie," July called softly after her signal knock remained unanswered for the better part of a minute. "You there?" But there was no answer to her calling either. July knocked again, louder this time, waited, then turned the door handle and pushed the door inward. She sent her flashlight beam on a mission around the shed. It was as bare as Mother Hubbard's cupboard, not even a bone for the dog. The few things Georgie had collected in her stay in Beaver Row, her blankets and extra clothing, had been removed. Where had Georgie gone, and why? How would she manage? And why had she left without a word or a note or anything, without saying goodbye? Right now there was nothing to do except carry the food delivery back to her house and let June in on the latest developments. Coral nodded into the phone and then caught herself. Graham couldn't see her nodding, silly. "Right, Graham, I'll pass on the message," she answered. And after a moment of silence, while she listened to Graham's onslaught of words, "Right, Graham. Okay, Graham, sure, I'll tell her." It didn't seem as though Graham believed her capable of passing on the message. In fact, Coral didn't have the best history of passing on messages unless she wrote them down. Fuzzy-headed, Mum called her sometimes. She had a good memory for all sorts of random things, but she was a bit absent-minded. After all, there were so many other important things to think about. It was sometimes hard to keep her mind on reality. Head in the clouds, that was how Graham put it, and Coral had to admit that the description was accurate. She'd go right now and deliver the message to Mum, though, that way she wouldn't have time to forget. Mum was up on the roof, finishing the chimney. "Mum! Hey, Mum!" Coral called. "I'm up here, Cor." "I know. Can you come down for a second? Your phone was ringing and it was Graham, so I answered it. I have a message for you." "Can you come up? That would be easier than me coming down." Coral hated heights, but she tried to keep fear from slowing her down, at anything. She climbed the ladder gingerly, breathing a little harder than normal by the time she got to the top. Not from the exertion, just from nerves. She put both knees on the cedar shakes and crawled forward, unwilling to stand. "Ugh," she said as she craned her neck to look over the edge of the roof, the irresistible urge to see just how high up she was getting the better of her. It was a mistake. It wasn't too bad if she didn't look down. The thought of swinging a leg off the roof until her foot found the nearest rung of the ladder churned the adrenaline around and around in her stomach. She'd best deliver her message and get down as fast as she could and get it over with. "Okay, so what did Mum have to say?" Mum asked, apparently not noticing Coral's discomfort, intent on her masonry. "Uncle Hal will be in Cherryton next week. We're supposed to go for dinner to Graham's on Tuesday." "Sure, sounds fine. It'll be nice to see Hal again. Cor, can you do me a favor? When you get back down to earth, give Gram a call for me, will you, and tell her we can come." "Yep, I can. If she'll answer, you know how she is about the phone." "I know. We really need to talk her into getting call display. If she just knew who was calling, it would make her life so much easier, and then she could answer if she knows it's us. It would take most of the excitement out of her life, though, I suppose. I think the uncertainty of not knowing who's calling her and wondering if she should answer or not adds some drama to her day," Mum said, laughing. Coral laughed a little forced laugh, too. She just couldn't relax while she was up on the roof. "Okay, I'm going now," she said. On hands and knees, she crept to the edge of the roof where the ladder leaned. And now the worst bit. That stretch where one foot dangled in midair until it reached the highest rung. Ick. What a bad feeling that was. Ah, there it was. Her foot met something solid, and she risked the other foot going over. She could feel her palms sweating and the soles of her feet tingling. Now she just had to release her handhold on the cedar shingles of the roof and grasp the uprights of the ladder. Phew, the worst was over. Whatever she did, she mustn't look down, she knew that. She blew out the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding all the way down the ladder when she felt the beautiful feeling of solid ground under her. Mission accomplished. Fern couldn't seem to get her mind off that brother of Coral's. Why on earth had he been looking at her? Or had he? Maybe it was entirely her imagination. That must be the case. Guys never noticed her. It just didn't make sense that Coral's brother would have. What was his name again? Will. Wilson? She thought she'd heard someone calling him Will or Wilson or maybe both at some time. Had she even been introduced to him? Now she couldn't remember. She'd obviously been a little flustered. The entire conversation seemed like a blur to her. All she knew was that she had agreed, if she was allowed, to join the Lyons family for their jam nights when they got them started up again. What had she been thinking? Why was her inability to say the word no always getting her into situations she didn't want to be in? She didn't know how to play the kind of music the family played. She knew how to play classical piano and violin, and she'd never really tried to play by ear. She'd be in completely over her head. But of course, it wouldn't happen. There was a smidge of regret Fern tried to deny at the thought that it would never happen. If I'm allowed, had been her proviso. And she never would be allowed, she was sure of that. Joanna was wary of new people. Not exactly the trusting type, her mother. She never had any real reason, but she generally discouraged Fern from making new friends. June and July had sneaked past her defenses only because the girls had known each other so long. Joanna wouldn't likely take to the idea of Fern joining the Lyons on their jam nights. So, Fern was safe, surely. But why couldn't she seem to stop thinking about that Will Lyons? What was wrong with her, anyway? This wasn't like her. Go to sleep, she told herself, rolling over and closing her eyes. But her mind's eye still kept replaying the looks Will had been giving her.